I came up with the through line. The team filled in the details. That was what Marcus said in the leadership review, standing beside my campaign deck like he'd built it with his own hands, while I sat in the back row with my laptop closed and my name missing from every slide. 4 months later, he was in a client QBR trying to stop me from showing a timeline that had 47 recap emails, 19 draft files, and one message from the client that started with, "Sam's idea solved it." By the end of that meeting, Marcus had lost the account relationship he bragged about, his team, and the management track he thought was guaranteed. But to understand why the client repeated his own words back to him as a question, you have to know why I was the one person he thought would never fight him. Before we go any further, thank you for being here. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from, because stories like this happen in offices everywhere. And I know I'm not the only person who's watched someone else take a bow for work they didn't do. A quick note. Some details have been changed for storytelling, but the emotions and the workplace lesson at the center of it are real. The room where it happened had glass on 3 sides and a long walnut table that made every meeting feel more important than it usually was. Our agency called it the North Conference Room because it faced the north side of the building, which mostly meant you could see the parking garage and the back of a sandwich shop. Still, it was the room leadership used when they wanted people to feel like decisions were being made. Marcus stood at the front with a little black clicker in his right hand. He always used a clicker, even when the deck was 10 slides. He said it made presentations feel intentional. He was wearing the navy blazer he kept on the back of his office chair for executive meetings, and he had that practiced half smile he used whenever our managing director, Elaine, asked a question. The slide behind him showed the hero line for the campaign that had just won us our biggest client of the year. One home, every season. That line was mine. Not in the loose. I had a thought once in a brainstorm kind of way. I had written it on a yellow sticky note at 8:12 on a Tuesday morning, taped it to my monitor, tested it in 3 concept boards, defended it when Marcus said it sounded too soft, rewrote the whole customer journey around it, and sent a recap email that same day explaining why the entire campaign should stop selling furniture as furniture and start selling continuity. The idea was simple. Our client, Homevale, made modular home goods. Their previous campaigns treated every product like a separate thing: patio chairs in spring, organizers in January, bedding in fall. My concept turned it into one emotional promise. Your home changes with you, but it still feels like yours. That idea won the room. The client loved it. Their VP of marketing, Priya Nair, had said during the pitch, "This is the first time an agency has understood that we're not selling storage bins. We're selling people the feeling that their life is not as chaotic as it looks." I still remembered that line because I wrote it down. That was my habit. I wrote everything down. I was a product designer at Bexley Crane, a mid-sized marketing agency in Chicago that liked to call itself quietly dangerous in new business meetings, which was agency code for we charged a lot and wore sneakers with blazers. I had been there almost 3 years. My title was Senior Product Designer, but in practice, I was the person who built the middle of a project. Strategy would come in with a brief. Accounts would come in with client fears. Creative would come in with big mood boards and 10 adjectives. I was the one who turned all that into a flow a client could understand, a customer path a developer could build, and a deck that did not fall apart when someone asked, "Okay, but what does the user actually do next?" I wasn't loud about it. That mattered later. I didn't hate presenting. I could do it. I had done it plenty. But I wasn't one of those people who treated every meeting like an audition. I liked the work more than the performance around the work. Give me a whiteboard, a messy problem, a deadline, and 2 people who could disagree without making it personal, and I was happy. Put me in a room with 6 directors competing to sound visionary, and I started mentally reorganizing my desktop folders. Marcus loved those rooms. Marcus Reed was my manager. Officially, his title was Group Experience Director. Unofficially, he was a mid-level manager with a talent for being close to credit and far from blame. He had been at Bexley Crane for 5 years, which in agency time made him feel ancient. He knew where every old deck lived. He knew which executive liked numbers and which executive liked phrases like brand truth. He knew how to say, "My team is exploring that," in a way that sounded like leadership, even when the team was one designer at her desk eating cold noodles at 9:30 p.m. Marcus was not stupid. That was the part people got wrong when they tried to warn you about him. He wasn't the cartoon bad boss who didn't understand the work. He understood enough to know where the shine was. He could walk into a review, hear a half-built idea, identify the phrase that would get an executive to lean forward, and then spend the next week acting like the phrase had started in his notebook. At first, I thought he was just insecure. Then I realized he had a system. He controlled who got invited to leadership reviews. He controlled who presented to clients. He controlled which names went on the first slide, which names went in the footer, and which names got mentioned in the huge team effort paragraph at the end of a recap. He never said, "I am taking credit for your work." He said, "I'll socialize this upward." He said, "Let me carry the narrative." He said, "Leadership doesn't need to see the sausage getting made." And because our agency was busy, and because most people were tired, and because quiet competence often gets mistaken for consent, people let him. I let him longer than I should have. Part of that was practical. My younger sister Lena was finishing her last year of nursing school. Our mom had died when Lena was 17, and after that, the money conversations in our family stopped being theoretical. I wasn't paying all of Lena's tuition, but I was covering rent when her clinic hours made working impossible. I was also trying to save enough to move out of my shoebox apartment above a dry cleaner that made all my sweaters smell faintly like chemicals. A promotion to lead product designer would have changed my life in a very boring and very real way. Better salary, more stability, fewer calculations in the grocery aisle. Review season was 3 months away when the Homevale project started. That is why Marcus thought he had me. The first meeting for Homevale was on a Monday in late February. We were in one of the small huddle rooms with a screen that always took 8 minutes to connect. There were 5 of us there. Marcus, me, Tessa from copy, Jonah from accounts, Priya from the client side on video, and an account director named Claire who popped in halfway through and said, "Sorry, I have a hard stop," even though nobody had asked. Homevale had a problem. Their products were good, their customer reviews were strong, but their campaigns were not sticking. People bought a shelf or a blanket and disappeared. The client wanted a campaign that made customers see Homevale as a system, not a catalog. Priya said, "We need a reason for them to come back that isn't just discounting." Marcus nodded in that slow way he did when he wanted people to see him thinking. "So, loyalty architecture," he said. Priya smiled politely. "Maybe, but not another points program." Tessa asked if they had customer interviews. Jonah said he'd send them after the meeting. Marcus talked for 5 minutes about owning the transitions of domestic life, which sounded impressive until you tried to put it on a homepage. I was quiet at first. I had the brief open on one screen and a blank notes doc on the other. The customer interviews were messy, but a pattern was already showing. People bought Homevale items when something in their life shifted. A move, a baby, a breakup, a parent moving in, a new job, a dog. The products were not the emotional center. The change was. About 30 minutes in, I said, "What if we're looking at the wrong object?" Marcus turned his head a little. "Meaning?" "We're treating the chair or the organizer like the thing. But the thing is, the room staying usable when life changes. The product is just the part they can buy. Priya leaned closer to her camera. I kept going because I could feel the idea forming while I talked, which is always a weird feeling, like following a string in the dark. If someone buys a patio set in May and a storage bench in September, those are separate purchases in the catalog. But in the customer's life, that's one home adapting across seasons. Same home, different stage. What if the campaign isn't about seasonal collections? What if it's about continuity? Tessa wrote something down. Priya said, "Say that again." Continuity. Marcus clicked his pen twice. That was his tell when someone else in the room had landed something. I said, "One home, every season." There was a 2-second silence. Not the bad kind, the good kind. Priya smiled. That's closer." Tessa said, "That's a line." Jonah said, "That's a platform." Marcus said, "Okay, let's not fall in love too fast." I should have noticed the way he said it. Not, "Nice, Sam." Not, "Let's build on Sam's thought." Just, "Let's not fall in love too fast." As if the idea had wandered into the room by itself and needed him to keep it from getting too comfortable. After the meeting, I did what I always did. I sent a recap. Subject line, "Home Veil Concept Sync, Notes and Next Steps." I wrote down the main discussion points, the questions from Priya, the decisions we had made, and the line that would become the campaign spine. I wrote, "Concept direction proposed by Sam. Build platform around continuity rather than product categories. Working line, one home, every season." I sent it to Marcus, Tessa, Jonah, Claire, and Priya. That email was the first piece of the paper trail. At the time, it was just a habit. I had started sending recap notes at my first job because my old creative director had a memory like a goldfish and a temper like a car alarm. If a client asked why we had changed a flow, he would say, "Who approved that?" with his whole chest, even if he had approved it twice. So I learned to write everything down, not in a dramatic way. No legal language, no "per our discussion," unless I was already angry. Just clean notes, clear decisions, dates, next steps. People teased me for it. Tessa once called my inbox the Smithsonian of meetings. She wasn't wrong. I kept folders by client. I saved drafts by date. I exported important whiteboards before the software inevitably glitched. I named files like a person who planned to be deposed someday. Homevale_concept boards _Sam draft _V03 _March 4th. Homevale_user journey _Sam notes March 6th. Homevale_QA _client feedback Priya March 10th. Was it excessive? Maybe. Did it save me? Completely. For the next 6 weeks, Homevale ate my life. I built the first concept boards. I mapped the product ecosystem. I designed the interactive prototype for the landing page, where customers could pick a life stage and see how the same room shifted across the year. I worked with Tessa on the copy system, because Tessa was brilliant but liked to write headlines that made executives nervous. I sat with Jonah for 2 hours while he translated client anxiety into bullet points that didn't sound like panic. I even rebuilt the pitch deck myself after Marcus decided at 6:12 p.m. the night before the pitch that the whole thing needed to feel more inevitable. That was his favorite word during Homevale. Inevitable. "The narrative has to feel inevitable," he said. "The user journey has to feel inevitable. The room reveal has to feel inevitable." It got to the point where Tessa wrote "inevitable" on a sticky note and stuck it to the snack shelf above a jar of almonds nobody liked. Marcus was involved, but in the way a person is involved when they keep walking through a kitchen and lifting lids. He would ask what was cooking. He would taste something. He would say it needed acid. Then he would leave before the dishes. On March 7th, he stopped by my desk at 5:40 p.m. while I was trying to fix a transition in the prototype that made a sofa jump sideways like it was haunted. "How's my home veil deck?" he asked. My fingers stopped on the trackpad. "Your home veil deck?" He smiled. "Our home veil deck. Don't get territorial." There it was, wrapped in a joke. I said, "The prototype's close. Tessa's copy needs one more pass." I sent the latest version in the recap. "Good," he said. "I'll take it from here for the pitch." I looked up. "Take it from here how?" "I mean, I'll present it. Client likes a senior voice on the big stuff." Priya has been asking me the product questions directly. "And you've answered them well," he said, like he was handing out a sticker. "But this is a business conversation." I remember the way that landed. Not because it was the cruelest thing he ever said, but because it was so neat, so casual. The work I did was the substance, but the room where the substance turned into credit was suddenly a business conversation, and therefore not mine. I said, "I'd like to present the journey section at least." He made a little face, not quite a wince. "Let's see how the timing shakes out." That meant no. The pitch happened on March 12th. Marcus presented. I was in the room, but only because Priya had asked if the designer who built the room tool would be there in case her digital lead had questions. Marcus introduced me as Sam from Design, who helped support the prototype. Helped support. I had built it. The pitch still went well because the work was good. I sat near the end of the table and answered technical questions when Marcus gestured toward me. Priya's digital lead, a woman named Monique, asked about data capture and personalization rules. I explained the pathing, the modular content blocks, and why we had kept the first interaction low friction instead of demanding an email sign-up. Monique nodded. "That makes sense. Who came up with the seasonal continuity idea?" I opened my mouth. Marcus said, "That was a group breakthrough." He didn't look at me. After the pitch, Priya shook my hand and said, "The prototype is smart. That room slider? That's the thing." Marcus was standing close enough to hear. He put his hand between my shoulders and said, "Sam's great with details." Details. That was the second word that started to bother me. Support. Details. Execution. It took me a while to understand what he was doing. He wasn't erasing me all at once. He was shrinking me by category. If I was details, then the idea was someone else's. If I was support, then the leadership was someone else's. If I was execution, then strategy was someone else's. It was a quiet little fence, built one phrase at a time. Homevale signed the contract 2 weeks later. It was the biggest win our office had landed since the pandemic. The Slack announcement went out at 4:18 on a Thursday. Confetti emoji, champagne emoji, the usual agency celebration language that made everything sound like we had personally cured a disease. Elaine wrote, "Huge congratulations to Marcus and team for bringing strategic clarity and creative excellence to Homevale." Marcus replied with a selfie from the elevator, giving a thumbs up. I stared at the words, Marcus and team, longer than I should have. Tessa messaged me privately. "You alive?" "Define alive," I wrote back. "Heard." Then she added, "For what it's worth, everyone who was actually in the work knows." That was meant to comfort me. It did, a little. But in an agency, everyone who knows and everyone who decides are not the same group of people. The leadership review was the following Tuesday. I was not invited at first. Marcus told me it was a directors-only conversation and asked me to prep the final deck for him by Monday noon. I swallowed that because I had already learned that pushing too hard before review season could backfire. Then Claire from accounts forwarded me the calendar invite by accident with a note to Marcus that said, "Can Sam join for prototype questions?" Marcus waited 20 minutes, then forwarded the invite to me himself. Join as backup, he wrote. No need to prepare remarks. I should have known. The first 15 minutes were normal. Marcus walked leadership through the client context, the revenue, the timeline. He used my slide notes. He used Tessa's copy rationale. He used Jonah's account language. His name was on the title slide. Then Elaine asked, "What do you think made the difference?" We had 2 other agencies in the mix. Marcus paused, like a man deciding whether to be humble. "Honestly?" he said. "The through line. I came up with the through line early. The team filled in the details." I felt my whole body go still. There are moments at work where you know you have heard something important, but your brain refuses to process it because processing it means you have to decide what kind of person you are going to be next. Tessa was across the room. Her eyes flicked to mine. Jonah looked down at his notebook. Nobody said anything. The slide behind Marcus showed my concept board. My file name was gone from the footer. The notes had been rewritten in first-person plural. Our approach, our insight, our platform. Marcus kept talking. "I knew the client needed a unifying emotional idea," he said. "Home isn't static. It evolves." That became the backbone. Once we had that, Sam and Tessa did a nice job bringing it to life. A nice job. I remember the click of his slide remote. I remember Elaine nodding. I remember the reflection of my own face in the dark part of the screen, small and flat and embarrassed, as if I had been caught wanting something unreasonable. After the meeting, Marcus didn't look at me until we were in the hallway. "Good support in there," he said. I said, "You told them you came up with the through line." He didn't even slow down. I did. "Marcus." He stopped near the copy room, where the printer was making that grinding sound it made when it was about to jam. "Sam, leadership conversations are about narrative ownership," he said. I waited because I honestly thought there might be a second half to that sentence that made it less awful. There wasn't. I said, "The concept started in the February 26th meeting. I sent the recap." His face changed for the first time. Just a flicker. Annoyance, not guilt. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "The timestamp thing. It's not a good look." "Accuracy?" "Scorekeeping," he said. "You don't want to be that person." Then he walked away. That was the first time I thought, I may have a real problem here. The next 2 weeks confirmed it. Marcus reassigned me from the strategic parts of Homevale to production QA. Not because the project needed me there, because production QA kept me out of rooms. I went from shaping the platform to checking whether mobile breakpoints lined up and whether the third carousel tile loaded in Safari. That work matters. I don't look down on it. But I knew the difference between project need and manager punishment. When Priya emailed me directly with a question about the renewal roadmap, Marcus replied before I could. "Looping this through me for now," he wrote. "Sam is heads down on execution." When Monique asked if I would be on the next digital strategy call, Marcus said in the meeting, "We'll bring Sam in if we need implementation detail." When I updated the prototype with a new personalization path, Marcus forwarded it to Elaine with, "I pushed the team toward a more flexible lifecycle model." I started saving everything. Not dramatically, no secret spy folder, just a folder on my desktop called Homevale Records, because apparently I had become the kind of person who needed a folder called Homevale Records. I saved the original recap from February 26th. I saved every draft file with metadata. I saved Slack threads where Tessa said, "Sam's continuity idea unlocks the copy." I saved Priya's client message that said, "Sam's idea solved the product sprawl issue." I exported the whiteboard where my sticky note sat under the header Platform Thought. I downloaded the version history from the pitch deck, which showed my name creating the first 28 slides before Marcus duplicated the file and renamed it final_MR. At night, I told myself I was being paranoid. Then Marcus gave me proof I wasn't. My quarterly review was scheduled for April 18th at 3 p.m. I spent the week before it assembling my accomplishments, which is one of those corporate rituals that makes you feel like you're writing a dating profile for your own labor. I included Homevale at the top. I wrote, originated core campaign platform and product journey for Homevale, contributing to $2.4 million annual account win. Marcus opened the review doc, read that line, and laughed. Not loudly, just enough. We need to soften this, he said. What part? Originated. I sat across from him in his office, which had a glass wall facing the open floor. His desk was too clean. He had one framed print, a black and white photo of some mountain, and a stack of business books arranged so the titles faced visitors. I said, I did originate it. He leaned back. You contributed to it. Marcus, there are recap emails. He held up one hand. Again, with the emails. Because they show what happened. They show your version of what happened. That sentence told me more than he meant it to. I said, they were sent the day of the meeting to everyone in the room, including the client. His jaw tightened. Sam, I'm going to give you some advice because I like you. No sentence that begins that way has ever improved anyone's day. He said, you are very good at the work. Very good. But leadership is not about proving you were the first person to say a thing. Leadership is about moving a team forward. Taking credit moves the team forward? His smile disappeared. Careful. There it was. Just one word. But it changed the temperature in the office. He clicked into the review form and highlighted the sentence. Then he rewrote it while I watched. Contributed design execution and product thinking to successful Homevale pitch. He said, that's more accurate. I said, no, it's less specific. It is more appropriate. For who? He closed the laptop halfway. Review season is not the time to become difficult. I felt my face get hot. He kept going, softer now, which somehow made it worse. You're up for lead consideration eventually. Maybe not this cycle, but eventually. People talk. The story you want around you is collaborative, mature, easy to trust. Not territorial, not defensive. Not someone who keeps a little evidence file every time a manager says we instead of I. I looked at him and realized he knew. Not the details, maybe, but he knew I had receipts. He just thought my need for the promotion was stronger than my willingness to use them. He wasn't completely wrong. That was the worst part. I needed that promotion. Not in the inspirational LinkedIn way. In the rent and tuition way. Lena had a clinical placement starting in June, which meant fewer shifts at the cafe. My car needed brakes. My lease renewal had come with a $175 increase because apparently the privilege of smelling dry cleaning fluid had appreciated. I did not have a spouse with benefits or parents I could call for a bridge loan. I had a spreadsheet with color-coded tabs and a sister who texted me pictures of her pharmacology notes at midnight. So when Marcus said, "Are we aligned?" I heard the threat under it. I said, "I understand what you're saying." He smiled again. Good. He submitted the review. 2 weeks later, promotions were announced. I did not get led. The person who did was a designer named Paul in another group, who was perfectly nice and had not built the biggest winning campaign of the quarter. My feedback said I was highly reliable and a trusted execution partner. But that leadership wanted to see me demonstrate greater executive presence and ownership. Ownership. I read that word 3 times. Then I closed my laptop, walked to the stairwell, and sat on the 3rd step between floors 4 and 5 until my phone buzzed with a text from Lena. How did review go? I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, "Not this round. I'm okay." That was a lie, but it was the kind of lie older siblings tell because the truth would cost someone else sleep. I nearly quit that week. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't write an angry resignation letter. I didn't imagine throwing a stapler through Marcus's glass wall. I just opened job listings at midnight and searched for product designer remote lead until every posting blurred into the same list of requirements. I even looked at an internal transfer to a smaller team under a director named Annika, who had a reputation for being blunt but fair. The role paid the same. It would get me away from Marcus. It would also let the Home Vale story become company history, with Marcus's name attached to it forever. For 3 days, I told myself that might be the adult choice. On the 4th day, Tessa showed up at my desk with 2 coffees and said, "Walk?" We walked down to the river because agency people love pretending a 10-minute walk can fix structural problems. It was cold for May, windy in that Chicago way that feels personal. Tessa handed me the coffee like she was delivering medical supplies. "He's doing it to me too," she said. I stopped near the railing. "What?" "Marcus. The credit thing." I looked at her. She took a breath. "Remember the Wellness pitch last year?" Wellness was a health app we had pitched and lost, which meant nobody talked about it anymore because agencies have very short memories for losses. Tessa said, "The retention language? Care that keeps showing up?" That was mine. He presented it in a leadership postmortem as his repositioning. I didn't say anything because we lost, so it felt petty. Then he used it in a conference talk. "He what?" "Yeah." She looked out at the water. "He sent me the link afterward, with a smiley face." I actually laughed because it was either that, or make a sound that would worry pedestrians. Tessa said, "I know you have notes." "I have notes." "Good. I have files." That was the first time the story became bigger than me. Until then, part of me had been trapped in the humiliating little question people in offices use to keep themselves quiet. What if I'm overreacting? What if this is normal? What if everyone has to let managers package their work? What if my ego is the problem? Tessa ended that. She had her own paper trail, drafts, Slack messages, a video recording from a prep call where she had walked Marcus through the wellness copy strategy while he said, "Yeah, I'm not sure the phrasing is there yet." Then, 4 weeks later, he used almost the exact phrasing on stage at a regional marketing panel with one word changed. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. She gave me a look. "To who? Marcus? The man who controls whether I get in rooms? HR? Who would ask Elaine whether Marcus is valuable, and Elaine would say, 'He just won Home Vale?'" There it was again. Home Vale wasn't just stolen credit. It was armor. Marcus had used my work to make himself more untouchable. That afternoon, I went back to my desk and opened the internal job transfer page again. The role under Annika was still there. I hovered over the apply button. Then Priya emailed. The subject line was Home Vale Renewal QBR. Origin Story Request. "Hi Marcus and team," she wrote. "For the June QBR, I'd love to include a short origin story of how the platform came together. Our CEO will attend for the first 20 minutes and likes to understand the thinking behind big brand shifts. Could you walk us through the early insight, key decisions, and how the product experience grew out of the campaign idea?" Marcus replied 8 minutes later. "Absolutely. I'll own that section." I read the email once, then again. Something very quiet happened in me. Not rage. Rage is loud and burns off fast. This was colder than that. It was the feeling of a door closing behind me and another one opening in front of me. Marcus had already taken credit internally. He had already used that credit to block my promotion. Now he was about to stand in front of the client and perform the theft again, this time for their CEO, while I sat somewhere off camera like a helpful little footnote. I put my hands on the keyboard. I did not accuse him. I did not forward the recap emails to Elaine with a subject line like concern. I did not write a 5-paragraph message about attribution and fairness, even though I wanted to. I replied to Priya, Marcus, and the account team. Happy to help with this. Since I led the initial concept development and product journey, I can present a concise timeline of the campaign's origin and the key decisions that shaped the platform. Then I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Marcus called me within 40 seconds. I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring again. Then he appeared at my desk. Conference room, he said. Not a question. We went into a small room called Birch, which had no birch in it, just a wobbly table and a whiteboard stained with old marker ghosts. Marcus closed the door. What was that? He asked. A reply to Priya. Don't be cute. She asked for the origin story. I offered to present the parts I originated. He stared at me like I had spilled coffee on him. You are not presenting to their CEO. Why? Because I said so. It was the first honest thing he'd said all month. I sat down. He stayed standing, which was one of his little power moves. I had watched him use it on junior designers. It works better when the person seated still wants the standing person to like them. I said, Priya asked for the thinking behind the platform. I can walk through it. This is bigger than you. I know. Do you? Because from where I sit, this looks like you trying to make a client QBR about your feelings. I almost responded to that. Then I remembered something my first boss had told me after I cried in a bathroom over a client who had blamed me for his own missed deadline. Don't argue adjectives. Ask for facts. So I said, what fact in my email was inaccurate? Marcus blinked. That's not the point. It is to me. The point is chain of command. The client emailed the team. And I answered. Then I offered support. You asserted ownership. Because I have it. His mouth tightened. We sat in silence for a few seconds. Outside the glass wall, someone laughed too loudly near the printer. Inside Birch, Marcus leaned forward with both hands on the table. You need to think very carefully about the reputation you're building. There was that word again. Reputation. Not performance. Not truth. Reputation. I said, I am. He lowered his voice. If you try to embarrass me in front of a client, I promise you, Sam, it will not go the way you think. I looked at his hands on the table. Perfect manicure, silver watch. Wedding ring he spun with his thumb when he was irritated. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone, I said. I'm trying to present the origin story accurately. You are not on that agenda. He opened the door and left before I could answer. 10 minutes later, a revised QBR agenda hit my inbox. Marcus had removed my name completely. That should have been the end of it. In most offices, that would have been the end of it. Manager controls agenda. Employee complains privately. Maybe HR hears a vague concern about credit. Nothing happens because the client is happy and the manager looks successful. But Marcus had one problem. He had annoyed Nina. Nina Park was Elaine's executive assistant, though calling her an assistant made people underestimate her exactly once. Nina controlled Elaine's calendar, which meant she controlled the oxygen supply of half the agency. She knew who was actually prepared for meetings because she saw who sent materials on time. She knew who lied about being double booked. She knew which executives asked her to just move that, without considering that that involved 6 clients and a board member in London. I had always been nice to Nina, but not in a strategic way. I was nice because she was competent, And because I had once watched a creative director blame her for his own failure to read an invite, and I decided I would rather chew glass than become that person. When I needed Elaine for 5 minutes, I gave Nina context. When I moved a meeting, I apologized and offered options. When she asked for a PDF instead of a Figma link because Elaine was reviewing on a plane, I sent the PDF without making her ask twice. Small things. Office life is built out of small things. At 5:52 that evening, Nina messaged me. "Do you have the original Homevale concept timeline?" I stared at the message. Then I wrote, "Yes." She replied, "Can you send me the cleanest version?" Elaine asked why Priya requested origin story and whether we have the right presenter. My heart started beating hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. I typed, deleted, typed again. "I can send a factual timeline with links to source materials." "Perfect," Nina wrote. "Keep it factual." Keep it factual. That became the rule. Not emotional, not accusatory, not, "Marcus stole my work." Facts, dates, files, people in rooms, client messages, version history, recap emails. I stayed late that night building the timeline. I did not make it pretty at first. I made it true. February 26th, 10:03 a.m. Homevale Discovery Sync begins. February 26th, 10:41 a.m. Sam proposes continuity platform and working line, one home, every season. Attendees: Marcus Reed, Sam Alvarez, Tessa Grant, Jonah Bell, Priya Nair. February 26th, 11:18 a.m. Recap email sent by Sam documenting concept direction. February 27th, 8:12 a.m. Whiteboard export includes sticky note one home every season under Sam's user account. March 3rd, 6:44 p.m. Draft concept boards created by Sam. March 5th, 2:09 p.m. Tessa comments. Sam's continuity idea gives us the copy spine. March 10th, 4:37 p.m. Priya messages. Sam's idea solved the product sprawl issue. March 12th, pitch delivered. Marcus presents. Sam answers product journey questions. I added links. I added screenshots where links could be altered or permissions could fail. I added file metadata. I added the version history showing Marcus's final_MR deck branching off my draft after the core concept was already built. Then I made a second section. Pattern concerns. I hesitated before adding Tessa's evidence. It wasn't my story to use, so I called her. She picked up on the second ring and said, "Please tell me you're not calling to talk yourself out of it." "I'm building a timeline for Nina." "Good. Can I include wellness?" There was a long pause. "Yes," she said. "Are you sure?" "Sam, he used my line on a stage and then sent me the video. Include it." So I did. Carefully. Not a rant. A pattern. Wellness, October prior year. Tessa develops retention copy platform. Marcus presents similar language externally in January without attribution. Supporting files attached. I sent the timeline to Nina at 9:14 p.m. Then I sat at my desk in the mostly empty office, listening to the cleaning crew's cart squeak down the hallway, and wondered if I had just saved my career or set it on fire. Nina replied at 9:22. Received. Thank you. Do not forward this elsewhere tonight. That was all. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, Marcus acted normal, which was how I knew something had shifted. When people like Marcus have control, they press. When they are waiting to see how much trouble they are in, they become pleasant. He stopped by my desk with coffee he had not bought for me. "Morning," he said. "Morning. Listen, yesterday got a little tense. I saved the file I was working on before I looked up. It did. I want us aligned. Homevale is important. There's room for everyone to shine if we don't turn this into a tug of war." Everyone to shine. That was new. He said, Let's reset. I'll handle the QBR narrative, but I'll make sure to mention your contributions. What kind of mention? He laughed once like I was being adorably literal. A good one. Marcus? Sam. What kind of mention? He looked around the open floor, then lowered his voice. I'll say you were instrumental in the prototype. There it was, back inside the fence. The client asked for origin story, I said. And the origin story includes many people. It started with the continuity platform. It started with the business problem. And then I proposed the platform. His smile thinned. You really can't help yourself, can you? I didn't answer. He leaned down slightly. Be careful who you make this hard for. Then he walked away. That line stayed with me for the rest of the day because it was almost honest. He didn't say be careful what you get wrong. He didn't say be careful what you accuse me of. He said, be careful who you make this hard for. He thought my problem was that I was making his life inconvenient. By lunchtime, Nina had moved the QBR prep meeting from Marcus's calendar to Elaine's. That sounds small, but inside our agency, it was a flare in the sky. Elaine did not usually attend account prep unless something was high risk or high value. Homevale was both. The prep meeting was Friday at 11 o'clock. I was invited. Marcus was invited. Tessa was invited. Jonah was invited. Claire was invited. Nina sent the agenda. The first item was origin story alignment and presenter. Marcus did not message me. At 10:58 on Friday, I walked into North Conference with my laptop, a water bottle, and the timeline file printed in a plain black folder. I don't know why I printed it. Maybe because paper makes things feel less like a feeling and more like evidence. Maybe because I wanted something to hold so my hands wouldn't shake. Elaine sat at the head of the table. Nina sat beside her with a notebook. Marcus sat 2 chairs down, blazer on, face calm. Tessa sat across from me and tapped her pen twice against her notebook. That was our new signal. Not exactly military grade, but in an agency, you work with what you have. Elaine opened without small talk. Priya asked for an origin story at the QBR. Marcus, you put yourself as presenter. Sam, you responded that you led initial concept development. I want to understand the cleanest and most accurate way to handle this. Marcus smiled. Absolutely. I think this got a little tangled. As the account lead on the strategy side, I shaped the overall narrative. Sam did excellent product design work, and I want to make sure that gets acknowledged. Elaine looked at me. Sam? My mouth was dry. I took one sip of water. I can walk through the timeline. Marcus shifted. Elaine said, please. So I did. I did not say Marcus stole anything. I did not say I had been punished. I did not say he was lying. I opened the timeline and read the first 6 entries. Meeting, proposal, recap, whiteboard, draft, client message. Each one had a date and a source. Then I stopped. That's the origin of the campaign platform, I said. Marcus presented the final pitch. I built the platform and product journey that the QBR is asking about. The room was very quiet. Elaine looked at the timeline on the screen. Marcus? Marcus gave a small laugh. I don't dispute that Sam contributed early language. Tessa's pen stopped moving. I kept my eyes on Elaine. Marcus continued. But we all know ideas evolve. A recap email after a brainstorm doesn't mean someone owns the strategy. Nina wrote something down. Elaine said, did you tell leadership you came up with the through line? Marcus's face did something strange. It didn't change much, but the muscles around his eyes tightened. I may have summarized it that way. Did you? Elaine, I don't remember the exact wording. Tessa said very quietly, I do. Everyone looked at her. She flipped open her notebook. You said, I came up with the through line. The team filled in the details. Marcus stared at her. Tessa met his eyes. I wrote it down. I almost smiled. Almost. Elaine looked back at Marcus. Is that accurate? He adjusted his watch. If I said that, it was shorthand. For what? For the fact that I shaped the narrative at a leadership level. Elaine sat back. The client is asking for the thinking behind the campaign. If Sam has the clearest timeline and built the product journey, Sam should present that portion. Marcus inhaled. I have concerns about putting a designer in front of their CEO without proper framing. Elaine's eyebrows rose slightly. A designer from this team helped win the account. I hope our framing can survive that. Nina looked down at her notebook. Tessa looked down too. Jonah coughed into his fist. Marcus said, Of course. Elaine turned to me. Sam, prepare a 5-minute origin story with source slides. Keep it client-facing. No internal politics. Understood. Marcus, you still lead the business results section. Claire handles renewal scope. Jonah handles account timeline. Tessa can speak to messaging if needed. Marcus nodded once. Sounds good. It did not sound good. It sounded like a man swallowing glass. The meeting ended after 20 minutes. As we left, Marcus touched my elbow in the hallway. A word, he said. I looked at his hand until he removed it. We stepped near the window by the elevators. He kept his voice low. You think that was smart? I think it was accurate. You keep hiding behind that word. It's a useful word. He smiled, but his eyes were flat. You got your 5 minutes. Don't overplay it. I won't. No, listen to me. You will show a simple, sanitized origin story. You will not bring your little evidence binder into a client meeting. You will not imply anything about internal attribution. You will not make me correct you in front of Homevale. I said nothing. He leaned closer. Because I will. Then the elevator opened and he walked in. I stood there watching the doors close and realized he had just told me exactly what he planned to do. If I presented anything that made him look less central, he would interrupt, he would reframe, he would do it smoothly, with client-friendly language, and if I reacted emotionally, I would become the problem. So the plan had to be built around that, not around accusing him, around letting him be himself where the right people could see it. The QBR was 12 days away. I spent those 12 days doing 2 jobs. Publicly, I did my normal work. QA tickets, prototype updates, renewal slides. I answered Marcus's emails with short, clean replies. I did not give him anything emotional to use. Privately, I built the origin story deck. It was only 12 slides. That was the beauty of it. Long enough to show the truth. Short enough that nobody could call it a manifesto. Slide 1, the client challenge. Too many product categories. No unifying reason to return. Slide 2, customer pattern. Purchases clustered around life transitions, not product seasons. Slide 3, February 26th, discovery insight. Continuity over category. Slide 4, working platform. One home, every season. Slide 5, how the platform translated into product experience. Slide 6, prototype path. The room changes as life changes. Slide 7, messaging system. Slide 8, client validation. Slide 9, launch results to date. Slide 10, renewal opportunity. Slide 11, next decision points. Slide 12, source appendix. The appendix was the trick. It did not say, proof, Marcus lied. It said source appendix, which is the most boring phrase in the English language, and therefore one of the safest. It had small citations in the corner of the earlier slides. Recap email, February 26th. Whiteboard export, February 27th. Client feedback, March 10th. Deck version, March 12th. If no one questioned the origin, the appendix would sit there quietly. If Marcus tried to correct me, I could open it. That was the mechanism. Not revenge in the movie sense. No yelling, no leaked email, no dramatic confrontation in the lobby. Just the truth, organized so cleanly that the lie had nowhere comfortable to sit. Nina helped more than she ever admitted. 3 days before the QBR, she messaged me. Send your deck as PDF and PPT by 4 today. Elaine wants pre-read. I sent both. At 4:17, Nina wrote, received. Also, Priya asked whether you can speak directly after Marcus's opening. I moved you there. I stared at the message. Then I wrote, thank you. She replied, 5 minutes means 5 minutes. Make them count. That was Nina's version of a pep talk. Tessa helped with language. We stayed late on the Monday before the QBR, sitting in the kitchen area under the 2 bright pendant lights, eating vending machine pretzels for dinner like adults who had made several bad choices. She clicked through my deck and stopped on slide 3. Don't say I proposed, she said. Why? Because he'll argue with I. Say the team aligned around the insight after the February 26th discovery discussion. Then show the source. Let the slide do the stabbing. We're not stabbing. Fine. Let the slide perform a precise medical procedure. I laughed for the first time in days. She softened. Seriously, Sam, don't give him a moment where he can say you're making it about you. Make it about the work. The attribution will be obvious. She was right. Jonah helped too, in his nervous account person way. He didn't want conflict, but he wanted the client happy more than he feared Marcus. He told me Priya had been confused by Marcus's removal of my name from the agenda. She asked if you were still with the agency, he said. What? Yeah. She said, is Sam not on Homevale anymore? Marcus said you were focused on implementation. She said, that's strange, because we wanted the origin story from the person who built it. He looked miserable telling me this. I'm sorry, he said. For what? I should have said something earlier. That sentence landed harder than I expected. Because yes, he should have. Tessa should have. I should have. Everyone who heard Marcus say that line in leadership should have said, actually, that was Sam. But offices are very good at training people to survive the moment in front of them. You tell yourself silence is temporary. You tell yourself you'll fix it later. Then later becomes the version of events. I said, say something now. Jonah nodded. I will. The day before the QBR, Marcus sent me a revised deck. Not comments on my deck. A different deck. He had copied my origin story slides into the main QBR deck and edited them. My name was removed from the footer. The source citations were gone. Slide 3 now said, Marcus develops unifying campaign throughline. Slide 4 said, team expands platform into product experience. The source appendix was deleted entirely. His email said, tightened this for executive audience. Please use this version tomorrow. He copied Elaine. For about 10 seconds I just sat there. Then I forwarded the email to Nina with one line. This removes the source citations Elaine requested. I did not copy Marcus. Nina replied 6 minutes later. Use your version, Elaine aware. 2 minutes after that, Elaine replied to Marcus's thread. Thanks. For origin section, Sam will use the sourced version from pre-read. We need a clear record for client discussion. Marcus did not respond. But at 6:48 p.m., while I was packing my bag, he appeared beside my desk. Most people had left. Tessa was still at her desk with headphones on, but I could see from the angle of her head that she was not listening to anything. Marcus said, You went to Nina. I put my notebook in my bag. I clarified which deck Elaine wanted. You went around me. You copied Elaine. Don't play games. I zipped my bag. I'm going home. He stepped slightly into my path, not enough to be physically threatening, enough to make a point. You are making a mistake. I looked at him. There are times in life when you find out what exhaustion can do for courage. I was too tired to be diplomatic. Too tired to be scared in the normal way. I said, Marcus, tomorrow I'm going to present the origin story Priya asked for. I'm going to use the deck Elaine approved. If you have concerns, send them in writing. His face went still. You think you're untouchable because you have emails? No. Then what? I think I have emails. Tessa made a sound behind her monitor that might have been a cough. Marcus looked past me toward her desk, then back at me. Good night, Sam. Good night. I walked to the elevator with my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. That night, Lena called me while I was reheating pasta. You sound weird, she said. I have a big client meeting tomorrow. Good big or bad big? Depends who you ask. She was quiet for a second. Is this about the boss who took your idea? I had not meant to tell her as much as I had over the last few weeks, but sisters are inconveniently perceptive. Yeah. Are you going to say something? Sort of. That means yes, but in your scary professional way. I smiled in spite of myself. Maybe, she said. Remember when Mom made you return that science fair ribbon? I closed my eyes. Why would you bring up my villain origin story right now? When I was 11, I won second place at the school science fair for a project about water filtration. The teacher accidentally put first place on my certificate. I brought it home thrilled. My mom noticed, called the school, and made me bring it back the next day. I was furious. I told her nobody would know. She said, You would. At 11, that sounded like punishment. At 32, it sounded like a spine. Lena said, You always hated when people took credit, even when it was accidental. This wasn't accidental. Then make them give it back. She said it so simply, like the world worked that way. Maybe sometimes it can if someone keeps the receipts. The QBR was at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. It was hybrid because every modern office punishment is hybrid. Homevale's team was in their headquarters in Minneapolis. Our team was in North Conference. Their CEO, Daniel Cho, was joining for the first 20 minutes. Priya was in the room with him. Monique was there too, along with their finance lead and 2 brand managers. On our side, we had Elaine, Marcus, Claire, Jonah, Tessa, and me. Nina sat just outside the glass wall with her laptop, because technically she was not in the meeting, and practically she was controlling half of it. I got there 15 minutes early. Marcus was already there. Of course he was. He had the main deck open on the conference room screen. His version, the one without the sources. I stopped in the doorway. He looked up. Morning. That's not the approved deck. It's the main deck. Your sourced slides are too inside baseball. Elaine walked in behind me and said, Use Sam's version for the origin section. Marcus's smile turned on instantly. Of course. I was just checking flow. Elaine set her laptop down. Check it quickly. I connected my laptop as a backup. Then I sent the deck link in the meeting chat before anyone could pretend they didn't have it. Source version. Time-stamped. Accessible to attendees. Marcus watched me do it. He didn't say anything. At 10 o'clock, the Homevale room appeared on the screen. Priya waved. Daniel Cho, the CEO, sat at the head of their table in a gray sweater that probably cost more than my desk chair. He had the calm expression of someone who had spent years being presented to and had developed strong immunity to adjectives. Priya opened. Thanks, everyone. We wanted this QBR to be part performance review, part planning session. Daniel is especially interested in how the platform came together because we're thinking about how deeply to build it into next year's brand architecture. Marcus leaned forward. Great. We're excited. He started with the business context. To be fair, he was good. He knew how to make revenue sound like momentum and problems sound like opportunities. He walked through launch metrics, early engagement, email capture, social lift. He used we a lot. He did not mention me. Then Priya said, "Before we get into renewal scope, can we do the origin story?" Marcus smiled. "Absolutely." So, from our side, the key was identifying the emotional through line. I had been pushing the team to get beyond product categories and really think about the home as a changing system. My pulse kicked. There it was. He was going to do it in front of everyone, even after Elaine, even after the prep meeting, even after the source deck. He could not help himself. The same flaw that made him steal the credit made him unable to step away from the credit once the truth was in the room. Elaine turned her head slightly toward me. Not much, just enough. I clicked to my first slide. "I'll pick up there," I said. Marcus stopped. For half a second, his face flashed irritation. Then the client screen made him polite again. "Sure," he said. "Sam can walk through some of the build details." Not origin, build details. I smiled because it was easier than reacting. "The build came later," I said. "I'll start with the discovery moment that created the platform." Priya leaned closer to her camera. Daniel Cho looked at the screen. I went to slide 1. When we first met on February 26th, HomeVale's challenge was that customers loved individual products, but didn't connect them into a larger relationship with the brand. The early brief was organized by product season: spring patio, fall storage, winter bedding. But the customer interviews showed a different pattern. People weren't shopping by company season. They were shopping when their lives changed. I clicked. Move, new baby, remote work, divorce, parent moving in, first apartment. Those moments didn't fit into neat product categories. That led to the central insight. HomeVale wasn't just selling objects for rooms. It was helping the same home keep working across change. I clicked. Slide 3 showed the timeline entry. February 26th, Discovery Sync, continuity over category. Small source note in the bottom right, recap email, February 26th, 11:18 a.m. I said, that was the moment the continuity platform emerged. Marcus shifted in his chair. I clicked. Slide 4 showed the line, one home, every season, and under it, not huge, not theatrical, just clear. Working platform proposed in Discovery Recap, Sam Alvarez, February 26th. I heard Marcus inhale. Priya said, "Yes, I remember this." That was the first crack. She turned to Daniel on their side of the screen. "This was the line I mentioned. It was the first time the agency connected the product system to life stages." Daniel nodded. "Go on." I kept my voice steady. From there, the product experience had to prove the campaign line. We couldn't just say the home changes. We needed users to feel it. That's why the landing page prototype let people start with a room and then shift the life moment around it. I showed the prototype path. The room slider, the modular content blocks. The email capture that came after value instead of before. Monique asked a question about personalization rules. I answered. Daniel asked how much of the platform depended on paid media versus owned channels. I answered that too, with Jonah adding the account timing. It was going well. Too well for Marcus. When I reached the client validation slide, Marcus cut in. And just to add some color, this is where my guidance to the team was really important. The first versions were more executional. I kept pushing for that bigger through line. The room went quiet. Not dead quiet. Professional quiet. The kind where every person understands that something has just been said that might require handling. I could have let it pass. That would have been the old move. Instead, I said, I can show the version history if that's helpful. Marcus turned to me. No need. Priya said, actually, I wouldn't mind seeing it. Daniel, This may help explain why we like this direction so quickly. Daniel said, "Sure." Marcus's jaw moved once. I clicked to slide 12. Source appendix. It was the most boring slide in the deck. It was also the loaded one. I said, "This is the source trail for the origin section." The February 26th recap captured the continuity platform right after the discovery meeting. The March 3rd concept boards show the first visual translation. The March 5th copy comments show the messaging spine. The March 10th client note shows Homevale's validation before the final pitch deck. I click the first source link. The recap email opened in a browser window. Subject: Homevale Concept Sync. Notes and next steps. There it was. Concept direction proposed by Sam. Build platform around continuity rather than product categories. Working line: one home. Every season. My name. The date. The attendees. Priya copied on the email. For 3 seconds, nobody spoke. Then Priya said, "That's the email." Daniel looked from the email to Marcus's little video tile. "Marcus, you said you came up with the through line?" The exact words did not hit like a shout. They hit like a glass of cold water. Marcus smiled. Or tried to. "I think there may be a little confusion around wording," he said. Daniel did not smile back. Priya looked at Marcus too, and her expression had changed. Priya was a client, which meant she had been polite through every agency flourish we had ever served her. But politeness is not the same as trust, and I watched trust move out of her face in real time. She said, "In your leadership readout last month, you described it as your through line. I remember because I asked later whether Sam would be on the product roadmap work, and you said Sam was focused on execution." Marcus's hand moved toward his water glass and stopped. Elaine was very still beside me. I looked at the table, not at Marcus. This was the moment I had imagined and dreaded for almost a month. The moment when the evidence was visible, and the lie had to decide whether to retreat or become even louder. Marcus chose louder. "Priya, with respect, agency work is collaborative," he said. "A recap email doesn't capture the full leadership process behind a campaign." Priya's eyebrows rose. "I didn't say it wasn't collaborative." "Right, and I think that's the important point. Sam is a strong designer and I value the work, but the strategic shape of the account was something I was guiding from the beginning." Tessa looked down at her notebook. Jonah's foot stopped bouncing. Claire stared at the table like the wood grain had become urgent. Daniel said, "Can we see the next source?" I clicked. The whiteboard export opened. There was my yellow digital sticky note under my username. One home, every season. Continuity greater than seasonal categories. Show the room adapting, not products rotating. Timestamp, February 27th, 8:12 a.m. Daniel said nothing. I clicked the March 3rd concept board. My file, my metadata, the platform written in the corner. Then the March 5th copy comment from Tessa. Then Priya's own March 10th message. Sam's idea solved the product sprawl issue. Can we make sure the room journey stays central? Priya read that one aloud. Not loudly, just enough. Marcus's face changed then. It was small at first. His eyes moved from the client screen to Elaine, then to me, then back to the client. His posture had been open when the meeting started, arms loose, shoulders back. Now his elbows were close to his ribs. The clicker sat unused beside his laptop. He looked like a man trying to find a door in a room he had designed himself. Daniel leaned back. "I'm trying to understand something," he said. "Did we almost build next year's brand architecture around a platform without the person who originated it in the room?" No one answered immediately. That question did more than accuse Marcus. It turned the credit issue into a client risk. That was the one language executives never ignore. Elaine spoke. "Sam is in the room now, and will remain part of the strategic work going forward." Marcus's head turned toward her. It was quick, but I saw it. There was the understanding. Not full yet, but the first edge of it. He realized this was no longer about whether I would get a line in a review. It was about whether the client trusted him to tell them who was actually doing the thinking they were paying for. Priya said, "I appreciate that, but I need to be direct. We asked for Sam twice. We were told Sam was execution-focused. That is not what this timeline shows." Marcus opened his mouth. Elaine said, "Marcus, let's let Sam finish the origin section." He closed it. I went back to slide 8 with hands that felt both numb and too awake. I finished the presentation. I did not look at Marcus while I did it. That was partly discipline and partly self-preservation. If I looked at him, I might have lost the calm that was keeping the whole thing from becoming personal in the way he wanted. The rest of the QBR became strangely productive. That is the part nobody tells you about confrontation. Sometimes, once the lie is removed, the work can finally breathe. Monique asked better questions because she knew who could answer them. Priya pushed on renewal priorities. Daniel asked whether the platform could stretch into retail partnerships. Tessa spoke to messaging. Jonah outlined timing. Claire talked scope. Marcus contributed almost nothing for 20 minutes. When he did speak, Priya interrupted him. "I'd like Sam's view first." She said it politely. That made it worse for him. By the end of the meeting, Homevale agreed to continue renewal planning, but Priya asked for a revised account structure. "For next phase," she said, "we want clear workstream ownership. Strategic leads should be the people closest to the work. That includes Sam and Tessa." Daniel added, "And I'd like 1 point of accountability from Bexley Crane, who isn't filtering technical and strategy details away from us." He did not say Marcus's name. He didn't need to. After the client signed off, the screen went dark. No one in North Conference moved for a second. Then Marcus said, "Well, that was unnecessary." Elaine turned to him. "My office. Now." He laughed once. "Elaine, come on." Now. Nina appeared in the doorway with Elaine's notebook already in her hand. That was when Marcus looked at me. Really looked. Not the manager look. Not the warning look. The calculation had drained out of it for just a second, and what was left was anger mixed with something closer to fear. He knew. He knew the timeline had not been a stunt. He knew Nina had seen it. Elaine had seen it. The client had seen it. He knew Tessa had files. He knew every phrase he had used to shrink me, details, support, execution, had just been pulled into the light and made to look exactly as small as it was. And he knew the line that did it was his. I came up with the through line. The team filled in the details. That was the sentence Priya had remembered. That was the sentence Daniel had repeated back as a question. Marcus had built the trap himself. I had only brought the transcript. He stood slowly. "Sam," he said. I looked up. For one wild second I thought he might apologize. Not because he was sorry, because apologizing would have been the smart move. Instead he said, "I hope you're proud." I was not proud in the way he meant. I was shaking. My stomach hurt. My shirt was sticking to my back. I wanted to sit in my car and stare at nothing for an hour, but under all of that, there was something steady. I said, "I hope we're accurate." Tessa made that cough sound again. Elaine said, "Marcus." He followed her out. The door closed. For a moment, the rest of us just sat there. Then Claire exhaled so hard it was almost a whistle. Jonah said, "Holy hell." Tessa leaned back and looked at the ceiling. "Source appendix," she said. "My new religion." I laughed, and once I started, I couldn't stop for a few seconds. It wasn't happy laughter exactly. It was pressure leaving my body in the least professional form available. Nina stepped back into the doorway. "Sam," she said, Elaine wants the deck, the timeline, and source files in a shared folder. Tessa, same for wellness. Jonah, any client messages about presenter requests. By 2. No one argued. That afternoon was one long document upload. The agency did what agencies do when a client relationship is at risk. It moved very fast and pretended it had always planned to move that fast. Elaine pulled in HR. HR pulled in legal. Legal asked careful questions that used phrases like attribution pattern and client misrepresentation. Tessa sent her wellness files. Jonah sent the email where Priya asked for me and Marcus redirected. Claire sent notes from the pitch process. Nina, I later learned, had preserved the calendar history showing Marcus removing my name from the QBR agenda after Priya requested me. By 4:30, Marcus's calendar disappeared from the shared Homevale channel. By 5:15, Elaine sent a note to the internal team. Effective immediately, I will serve as interim executive sponsor for Homevale. Sam Alvarez will lead product strategy and platform continuity for the renewal phase. Tessa Grant will lead messaging architecture. Account operations remain with Claire and Jonah. Marcus was not mentioned. That was louder than any insult. The investigation took 3 weeks. I hate that word, investigation. It makes everything sound clean and formal. In reality, it was a series of uncomfortable meetings in rooms with no personality, where people asked me to explain things that had already happened, while I tried not to sound angry enough to be dismissed, or calm enough to seem unaffected. HR asked, "Did Marcus ever explicitly tell you not to claim credit?" I said yes, and showed them the review notes. They asked, "Did you feel your review outcome was affected by this?" I said yes, and showed them the before and after language in my review form. They asked, "Were you ever denied client access?" I said yes, and showed the agenda changes. They asked, "Why didn't you report this earlier?" That question almost got me. Not because it was unfair. It was obvious. But obvious questions can still hurt when the answer is, because the person doing it had power over me, and your system made that power feel bigger than your policy. I didn't say it exactly like that. I said, because Marcus controlled my review, client exposure, and promotion path. I didn't think a concern about credit would be taken seriously without documentation. The HR director, a woman named Diana, looked at the folder in front of her. "You were right to document." I nodded. Then I went to the bathroom and cried for 3 minutes in a stall, because apparently being validated by HR after weeks of professional gaslighting is not as emotionally tidy as it sounds. Tessa had her own meetings. She came out of one and sat on the floor beside my desk, which was not normal behavior for a workplace, but we had passed normal. They asked why I didn't report wellness. She said, "What did you say?" I said because we lost the pitch, and I didn't want to look like I was fighting over scraps. What did they say? Dina wrote something down and looked sad. Helpful. Very. We sat there in silence. Then Tessa said, "Do you think he did it to other people?" I thought about Marcus's 5 years at Bexley Crane, the junior designers who left after 1 year, the strategists who never got to present, the vague compliments in Slack, the conference talks, the decks with his initials at the end. Yes, I said. I was right. Once HR started asking, stories came out. Not huge dramatic stories, at least not individually. A slide title here, a client insight there, a junior designer's prototype shown in a new business meeting after she had been told the idea wasn't ready. A strategist named Noor, who had left the year before, sent a forwarded email from her personal archive after Tessa texted her. It showed Marcus taking a positioning framework Noor had built for a retail client and presenting it to leadership 2 weeks after she resigned. Noor's text said, "I've been waiting for someone to ask." That sentence haunted me. I had been waiting too. We all had, in different ways. Waiting for someone else to be brave first. Waiting for the pattern to become obvious enough that naming it wouldn't make us look petty. Waiting for a system that rewarded visibility to somehow notice invisible labor. Marcus had thrived in that waiting. He had counted on it. During those 3 weeks, he was still technically employed, but he stopped managing us. Elaine announced that he was focused on internal process alignment, which was agency language for something has gone wrong and lawyers may be nearby. He sat in his office with the door closed more often. People stopped drifting in to ask him questions. The Slack channel that used to light up with his quick opinions went quiet. One afternoon, I saw him in the kitchen making coffee. For a second, we were alone. He didn't look at me at first. He stirred powdered creamer into his mug like it required intense concentration. Then he said, "You know this could have been handled differently." I opened the fridge and took out my lunch. I tried. He laughed under his breath. "No, you didn't." I closed the fridge. I asked for attribution in my review. You told me not to be difficult. I asked to present the origin story. You removed me from the agenda. I sent a sourced deck. You deleted the sources. He turned then. You were setting me up. I was documenting the work. Same thing, apparently. I looked at him for a second, and I felt something almost like pity. Not enough to excuse him. Just enough to see how trapped he was by his own worldview. To Marcus, documentation was aggression because he experienced accuracy as a threat. He could not imagine a record that wasn't a weapon because he only noticed records when they contradicted the story he wanted. I said, "If the truth sets you up, that's not my part." His face hardened. "Careful, Sam." The old word. But this time it sounded different. Before, careful meant he had power and I should remember it. Now it sounded like a habit he couldn't stop using after the power had already moved. I picked up my lunch. "I am being careful." Then I left. Homevale's renewal process continued without him. That was the strangest revenge of all. The work got easier. Meetings got shorter. Priya emailed me directly and copied Elaine. Monique and I worked through the personalization roadmap in 2 sessions that would have taken 6 under Marcus because he would have needed to translate everything into executive fog. Tessa's messaging architecture got approved with only minor edits. Jonah seemed 10 years younger when he didn't have to predict which part Marcus would reframe later. 2 weeks after the QBR, Priya called me directly. "I wanted to say something off the main thread," she said. I braced. "Okay. I owe you an apology." "You don't. I do. I could tell there was something odd about the way Marcus talked over you, and I let it sit because the work was good and I didn't want to get involved in agency politics. That wasn't fair. I didn't know what to say." She continued. "For what it's worth, Daniel asked whether you would be leading the renewal strategy. Elaine said yes." I sat up straighter. "She did?" "She did." Priya paused. "Also, Daniel has a phrase he uses for agencies. He says, 'We pay for the person who knows where the bodies are buried, not the person who tours the cemetery.'" I laughed because I couldn't help it. That's vivid. He's like that. "Tell him I'm honored to be the body person, I guess." Priya laughed too. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a minute and let myself feel it. Not victory. Not yet. But a shift. A client had asked for me. An executive had confirmed it. The work was no longer being filtered through the person who had been taking it. That was worth more than a Slack shout-out. Still, the review cycle had passed. My promotion was gone for that quarter. Rent was still rent. Lena's tuition was still due. Marcus's investigation did not pay my bills. That was the lowest point after the apparent win, and it surprised me. I had thought that once the truth came out, I would feel instantly restored. Instead, I felt tired, angry in a slower way. The kind of anger that comes after you realize justice, even when it works, does not refund the months you spent doubting yourself. I told Annika I was still interested in the transfer. She invited me for coffee in the downstairs lobby. Annika was in her 40s, with silver hair cut blunt at her chin and a stare that made vague people become specific. She listened while I explained that I wanted a healthier team, that I appreciated Elaine's support, that I wasn't sure I could stay in Marcus's shadow even if Marcus was moved. She let me finish. Then she said, "Do you want the transfer because you want my work, or because someone made your current work unsafe?" I looked at my coffee. Both, maybe. That's not a no. No. She nodded. I'm not going to talk you out of applying. But I will say this. Sometimes leaving is freedom. Sometimes leaving is giving a broken system exactly what it was built to extract from you. That's a little dramatic for 9 a.m. I haven't finished my coffee. I smiled. She leaned back. You built leverage. Use it for what you actually want, not just escape. I thought about that for the rest of the day. What did I actually want? Not Marcus destroyed? Not really. I wanted the work credited correctly. I wanted the client relationship fixed. I wanted Tessa's work recognized. I wanted my promotion reconsidered because the reason it had been denied was built on a lie. I wanted the next quiet person under a manager like Marcus to have a record before the theft became history. So I stayed. Not passively, not hopefully. I wrote one more document. This one was for Elaine. Subject: Request for review cycle reconsideration based on corrected home veil record. It was not long. I had learned by then that the strongest documents are not the longest ones. I stated that my April review had removed specific language about originating the home veil platform. I attached the original self-review, Marcus's edits, the QBR source timeline, and the client's written request that I lead the renewal workstream. I asked for my promotion packet to be reconsidered outside the normal cycle because the evaluation had relied on inaccurate attribution and limited client exposure controlled by my manager. I read it 6 times, then I sent it. Elaine replied the next morning. Received. I agree this warrants review. Let's discuss Friday. Friday's meeting included Elaine, Dina from HR, and Nina, who once again was just there for notes, which by then I understood meant she was there to make sure nobody pretended later that the meeting had been vaguer than it was. Elaine said, "Your request is fair." I had prepared for resistance, so the sentence took a second to land. She continued, "We can't rerun the entire cycle, but we can correct a decision affected by inaccurate management input. Your packet will go to the promotion committee with the home veil record updated. I also want to be transparent. This is unusual." I said, "So is the situation." Nina's pen paused for half a second. Elaine nodded. "Yes." Dina said, "We are also reviewing Marcus's other evaluation inputs for direct reports over the past 2 years." That mattered. Not just for me. I thought of Noor, Tessa, the junior designer whose prototype disappeared into a new business deck, the people who had left before anyone asked. "Good," I said. Elaine looked at me for a moment. "I owe you an apology too." I was getting tired of apologies from people who had needed a 12-slide deck to see what was happening, but I also knew this one mattered. She said, "I accepted a clean story because it came with a client win attached. I didn't ask enough about who created the work." That's on me. I didn't let her off the hook with, "It's okay," because it wasn't. I said, "Thank you for saying that." That was all. The final decision on Marcus came the following Tuesday. We didn't get the whole story, of course. Companies never send an email that says, Here is exactly how bad it was. The official note said, Marcus would be moving into an individual contributor role focused on internal operations and would no longer manage people or lead client strategy. It also said Elaine would oversee a restructure of the experience team. In agency language, that was a fall from a balcony. Marcus did not get fired. I know some people want that ending. Part of me wanted it too. But in some industries, losing the path is worse than losing the job all at once. Marcus had built his identity around being the person in the room, the person with the narrative, the person who spoke for the team. Overnight, he became a man assigned to process documentation and internal tooling audits. No direct reports, no client ownership, no leadership track. His office went to Elaine's new strategy director. Marcus got a desk near the old file cabinets. I know because I walked by it on my way to a Homevale planning session. He was unpacking a small cardboard box. The navy blazer was folded over the back of a chair that did not look like it wanted the responsibility. His mountain print leaned against the desk, still wrapped in bubble wrap. For a second he looked smaller than I remembered. He saw me. I nodded once. He did not nod back. That was fine. The team restructure happened fast. Elaine split Marcus's old group into two work streams. Annika took over the broader experience practice. I was named lead product designer for Homevale and two adjacent accounts, with a direct reporting line to Annika instead of Marcus. Tessa became lead copy strategist for platform work. Jonah stayed on accounts, but got permission to push back when clients requested specific team members, and managers tried to filter them out. That sounds like a small policy, but small policies are where office abuse either grows or gets cut off. My promotion came through 3 weeks later, lead product designer, effective immediately, backdated to the start of the quarter. That last part was Nina. I never proved it, but I know. The payroll adjustment hit on a Friday morning, and when I saw the back pay number, I had to close my laptop and put both hands over my face. It was $4,860 after taxes. That covered Lena's summer rent, my car brakes, and the lease increase I had been pretending I could manage without panic. I texted Lena a screenshot of the deposit with the private details cropped out. She replied, "Mom would make you return it if it was wrong." Then, 3 seconds later, "But it's right, so buy better pasta." I did. The Homevale renewal signed in July. It was not the biggest contract in agency history, no matter how many adjectives the announcement tried to attach to it. But it was healthy, strategic, and built around clear workstream ownership. Priya insisted that the kickoff slide list the actual leads by name and role. Sam Alvarez, Product Strategy and Experience. Tessa Grant, Messaging Architecture. Claire Donovan, Account Leadership. Jonah Bell, Client Operations. Elaine presented that slide herself. After the meeting, Priya sent me a message. "Cleanest kickoff we've had with Bexley Crane. Also, Daniel wants the source appendix format standardized across major initiatives. He said it reduces theater." I forwarded that to Tessa. She replied, "Source appendix continues to be my new religion." We did standardize it. Not formally at first. We just started adding source slides to big decks, decision logs, meeting recaps, origin notes, not to make everything defensive, but to make authorship visible. It changed the room. People became a little more careful about saying "I pushed" when the record showed "we discussed." Junior designers started sending recaps. Strategists linked whiteboards. Copywriters put their names in draft notes. Some managers hated it. That was how we knew it worked. Marcus lasted 4 more months. He didn't flame out. He didn't send an angry all-staff email. He did the work assigned to him, badly at first, then quietly. People stopped asking what he thought in meetings because he wasn't in many meetings. The conference panel bio on his LinkedIn stayed up, but he stopped posting. In October, he announced he was leaving for a more operationally focused opportunity at a smaller agency in the suburbs. On his last day, there was no big farewell, just a card in the kitchen and a grocery store cake with too much frosting. I signed the card because not signing would have made me feel petty in a way I didn't want to carry. I wrote, "Best of luck." That was enough. As he was leaving, he stopped by my desk. For the first time in months, we were alone without a meeting wrapped around us. He said, "You got what you wanted." I looked at him. "Not exactly." He frowned. "No? I wanted you to stop taking credit before it got this far." He looked away. For once, he did not have a line ready. Then he said, "You know, I did help shape that campaign." "You did?" That surprised him. I meant it. He had helped. He had challenged parts of it. He had made the final pitch smoother. He had known how to sell an idea upward. The problem was never that Marcus did nothing. The problem was that he needed doing something to mean he had done everything. I said, "You helped shape it. You didn't originate it." His face tightened. There it was again. The little wince accuracy caused him. He said, "Still keeping score." I said, "Still keeping records." He gave a short laugh, but it had no force in it. "Good luck, Sam." "You too." Deki. He left with his mountain print under one arm and his blazer over the other. I watched him walk past the glass conference room where he had once told leadership he came up with the through line. Someone else was in there now, presenting a deck with source notes in the appendix. That felt right. The funny thing is, after all of it, my job became less dramatic. That is the part of revenge stories people don't always talk about. The best outcome is not living forever in the moment the villain realizes they lost. The best outcome is getting your ordinary life back with one less person standing on your neck. I still wrote recap emails. More people read them now. I still saved drafts by date. I still exported whiteboards. I still put names next to ideas, including other people's names, especially other people's names. If a junior designer said something smart in a messy meeting, I wrote it down in the recap. If Tessa found the line, I wrote that Tessa found the line. If Jonah solved a client problem before it became a crisis, I wrote that Jonah solved it. Credit is not a limited resource unless someone is hoarding it. The last real callback came almost a year later. We were in a leadership review for a different client, a regional bank that wanted to sound less like a regional bank, which is to say, it wanted to sound like every other regional bank but warmer. A junior strategist named Maya had found the actual insight after 3 weeks of everyone else circling it. She was nervous presenting, so Annika stood beside her, but Maya did the talking. When she finished, Elaine asked, "Who came up with the through line?" The room went quiet for half a beat. Not because anyone was afraid, because everyone remembered. Then Annika said, "Maya did." Maya blinked. Elaine smiled and wrote it down. I looked at the slide, at Maya's name in the footer, at the source note in the corner, and thought about that first Homevale recap, the one I sent out of habit. The one Marcus thought was scorekeeping. The one that became the first thread in a rope he didn't know he was tying around his own career. After the meeting, Maya came up to me and said, "Thanks for the recap template, by the way. It makes it harder for people to get fuzzy." "That's the idea," I said. She grinned. "Feels a little intense." "It is. Worth it?" I thought about Marcus in the QBR, watching his own words come back through a client's mouth. I thought about Priya's face when she realized the person she had asked for had been filtered out. I thought about Tessa's wellness files, Noor's text, Nina's late-night message, Lena telling me to make them give it back. I thought about the promotion letter and the back pay and the fact that my sister graduated nursing school with a cheap bouquet in her hands and no idea how close I had come to letting someone else's lie shrink both our lives. "Yeah," I said, "worth it." And that was the part Marcus never understood. The emails were never about being difficult. The drafts were never about ego. The timeline was never about revenge for one stolen line. It was about making reality harder to edit. Because if someone builds a career by taking credit from quiet people, the most dangerous thing you can do is stay quiet and keep receipts. Then, when the room finally asks where the idea came from, you don't have to shout. You just open the timeline.